Welcome to Whimsy Woods Farm, where the mornings are as bright as the sunflowers and the animals are full of charm and character. It's a place where every critter, every blade of grass, has its own story to tell. And no one tells those stories quite like Mr. Grumpy Gus and Mrs. Loving Wilma. Now, don't let that grumpy face fool you. Mr. Grumpy Gus might seem like a tough nut to crack, but underneath that frown lies a heart as big as Whimsy Woods Farm itself. And right beside him, with a twinkle in her eye and kindness in her every step, is Mrs. Loving Wilma. She's the heart of the farm, always bringing a touch of warmth and laughter wherever she goes. Welcome to Whimsy Woods Farm, where the sun rises over rolling hills and the air is filled with the sweet scent of creativity. Here in Craftville, we're not your typical farm. No, at Whimsy Woods Farm, we cultivate ideas, imagination, and a whole lot of whimsy. Join us as we meet the quirky characters who call this place home, each one with a heart full of craft and a dash of humor. From Grumpy Gus, our gruff but lovable newsman with a heart of gold, to his kind and ever-patient wife, Mrs. Loving Wilma, who always has a smile and a solution. And of course, let's not forget the new residents that are arriving today at Whimsy Woods Farm. Sunflower the princess horse, Junior the stubborn mule, Cluck Norris the crazy rooster, Not Bacon the cool pig, Mr. Timid the shy bull, and Billy the fearless goat. Today's adventure will spark joy and inspire your next creative project. So, grab your tools, settle in, and get ready to laugh, learn, and explore with us here on the very first episode of Whimsy Woods Farm, where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and every day is a new creation waiting to happen. Whimsy Woods Farm, where the magic of crafting meets the heart of the farm. This morning, all is quiet at Whimsy Woods Farm, but not for long. In the cozy kitchen, the kettle's whistling, and Mrs. Wilma is preparing breakfast, as bacon and eggs are sizzling in the frying pan, and the air is thick with the smell of fresh coffee. But today isn't just any day. It's the day the new residence is set to arrive, and Mrs. Wilma is buzzing with excitement with something more than just baking fresh bread and biscuits on her mind. With a gentle hum, she glides around, setting the table, her bright smile softening the room's early morning glow. Mr. Gus, still shaking off the last of his sleep, sips his coffee, his signature grumble ready to start the day. So, as the sun rises higher, the farm is set for a warm welcoming. A new adventure is about to begin at Whimsy Woods Farm, and even Grumpy Gus can't resist the charm of what's to come. As the clock ticks closer to the big moment, even Grumpy Gus can't help but feel a twinge of curiosity. Who are these new residents, and what sort of adventures will they bring to Whimsy Woods Farm? A place where every new friend brings fresh beginnings. Here is Mr. Tony D, the delivery man of TD Delivery. He is telling Mr. Grumpy Gus, Mrs. Loving Wilma all about the new animals that he is delivering to them today.
Y'all won't believe it, but Sunflower's here. The princess horse herself. She's quite the character, let me tell y'all. A real beauty with a coat that gleams like sunshine. But, well, she's got her quirks.
Quirks? What kind of quirks? A horse is a horse. Eats hay, drinks water, runs round a bit. How complicated can it be?
Oh, Gus, let Tony tell us. I'm sure Sunflower has her own unique personality. After all, every creature is special in its own way.
Exactly, Mrs. Wilma. See, Sunflower's a bit of a diva, if I'm being honest. She's a fussy eater. Won't touch her hay unless it's the freshest, softest stuff we've got. And don't even get me started on rain. That horse will not set foot outside if there's so much as a drizzle.
A horse that does not like rain. Now I've heard it all. Back in my day, horses worked hard in all kinds of weather. None of this fussy nonsense.
Well, you wouldn't believe how picky she is with her water, either. We had a little shower the other day, and Sunflower just stood there in her stall, staring out at the rain with this disgusted look on her face. I tried to coax her out, but she wasn't having any of it. Kept stomping her hoof like she was saying, nope, not today.
What? A horse that is scared of storms? What is the world coming to?
She sounds like a real princess, all right. But what does she like? Surely there's something that makes her happy.
Oh, that's easy. Sunflower loves sunny days. She prances around like she's in a parade, all graceful and proud. She's got this fancy trot she does when the sun's shining, almost like she's showing off. And she adores sweet apples. Not just any apples, though. Only the ones from the orchard up the hill. We tried giving her store-bought apples once, and she turned her nose up at him.
Oh, she is picky with her food. Hates the rain, and needs sunshine to be happy. Sounds more like a pampered house cat than a horse to me.
Oh, Gus, don't be so grumpy. You're just jealous that Sunflower has such refined tastes.
Refined taste? Ha! Sounds like more work than she is worth.
Well, she's high maintenance, but once you get to know her, you can't help but love her. She's got this soft, gentle side too. Loves a good brushing, and if you scratch just behind her ears, she'll lean into you like she's giving you a hug.
Aw, that sounds adorable. I bet Sunflower and I would get along just fine. I've always had a way with animals, especially the ones with big personalities.
Oh, I'm sure of it, Mrs. Wilma. Sunflower just needs a little extra TLC. Once she trusts you, she's loyal as can be. But you gotta be patient. She's not like the other horses. She's got standards.
Standards? I reckon she's got more standards than some folks I know here in Craftville.
Yeah, that's true enough. But hey, she's worth it. There's just something special about her. Like she knows she's royalty. The way she holds her head up high, struts around the pastures. It's like she's saying, I'm the queen of this farm, and don't you forget it.
Well, every farm needs a princess, doesn't it? And it sounds like Sunflower's found her place here at Whimsy Woods Farm. Here in Craftville.
She sure has, but just don't expect her to get along with the goats. They tried to share her space once, and she gave 'em a look that could freeze water. Those poor goats backed off quick. Sunflower doesn't share her throne.
Figures. I always said goats are a nuisance anyway.
Oh, Gus, you and your goats. You're just as stubborn as they are.
Sunflower the princess horse stood at the edge of the paddock, her delicate ears twitching at every sound. The gentle breeze blew through her golden mane, and she flicked her tail absent-mindedly. The sky was clear today, just the way she liked it. No hint of rain or those dreadful clouds that made everything damp and uncomfortable. As she nibbled on the fresh green grass, her thoughts wandered over the past few weeks at her new home, Whimsy Woods Farm. At first, Sunflower had been unsure about this place. The rolling hills, the big red barn, and the sprawling fields were all very picturesque, but it was nothing like the refined stables she was used to. Back where she came from, everything was neat, orderly, and most importantly, designed with her comfort in mind. Here, things were rustic and not always to her liking. Still, something about Whimsy Woods Farm intrigued her, though she'd never admitted to the humans. It was a new kind of adventure, and despite her princess-like demeanor, Sunflower enjoyed a little excitement now and then, provided it didn't involve rain or mud. Whimsy Woods Farm had a charm of its own. It was a place that bustled with life, from the clucking chickens to the playful goats who always seemed to be causing trouble. Not that she had any interest in mingling with those creatures. Sunflower was above such nonsense. She was regal, refined, and had no time for animals that didn't appreciate the finer things in life. But she couldn't deny that the atmosphere here was peaceful. There was something soothing about watching the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the fields. The farm had a rhythm to it, one that Sunflower was slowly coming to appreciate. But the real curiosity of Whimsy Woods Farm was the people who lived there. Grumpy Gus and Mrs. Loving Wilma, two humans who couldn't be more different, yet together, they made this farm feel like home, not just for themselves, but for the animals too. Sunflower snorted softly as she thought about Grumpy Gus. He was a puzzle to her, a human unlike any she had encountered before. From the moment she laid eyes on him, she had sensed his no-nonsense demeanor. Gus, with his furrowed brow and deep voice, seemed like someone who wasn't easily impressed. But Sunflower was used to turning heads and getting admiring glances from everyone she met. Yet Gus seemed completely indifferent to her beauty. That was something Sunflower wasn't sure how to feel about. On the one hoof, she was used to being admired. She was a princess, after all. But on the other hoof, There was something about Gus's gruffness that intrigued her. He didn't fawn over her like the stable hands from her old home did. No, Gus treated her like any other animal on the farm, and in some strange way, that earned her respect. Sunflower remembered the first time Gus had tried to get her out of the rain. It had been a light drizzle, the kind that made her mane stick to her neck and turned the ground into a muddy mess. She hated it. Gus had come out to the paddock, muttering something under his breath, and tried to coax her into the barn. But Sunflower had stood her ground, stubborn as ever. No amount of tugging on the lead rope or coaxing was going to get her to move. Not until the rain stopped. Gus had huffed, grumbled, and eventually walked away, leaving her to sulk in the paddock. But instead of being angry or frustrated, he had simply accepted her stubbornness. The next day, when the sun was shining, he'd returned with a bucket of fresh hay, as if the rainy standoff had never happened. Sunflower appreciated that. Gus didn't try to change her, didn't scold her for her princess-like tendencies. He just let her be who she was. And in return, Sunflower allowed him the occasional scratch behind her ears, though she would never admit she liked it. She had even started to notice the softer side of Gus. Sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he would talk to the animals, telling them stories about his younger days or grumbling about the weather. Sunflower would listen, her ears twitching at the sound of his voice. He had a way of making even the most mundane things sound important. And though he never said it outright, Sunflower could tell that Gus cared about the farm and all its creatures, even if he didn't show it with flowery words or big gestures. That, to her, was what made Grumpy Gus special. Then there was Mrs. Loving Wilma. Sunflower adored her. From the moment they met, Wilma had been nothing but kind, her soft voice and warm touch instantly putting Sunflower at ease. Wilma understood her in a way that not many humans did. She didn't push or prod, didn't try to force Sunflower into doing things she didn't want to do. Instead, Wilma approached her with patience, always taking the time to brush her mane or offer her a sweet apple. Sunflower had never met a human so in tune with her moods. It was as if Wilma knew exactly when she needed a little extra attention or when she just wanted to be left alone. That kind of understanding wasn't something Sunflower took lightly. In her mind, it made Wilma a rare and precious friend. One day, after a long brushing session, Sunflower had even nuzzled Wilma's shoulder, a gesture of affection she didn't often show. Wilma also had a way of making Whimsy Woods Farm feel like a fairy tale. She would hum softly as she worked, her flower blouse and top bun giving her an almost magical quality. Sometimes, when the sun was setting and casting long shadows across the farm, Sunflower would watch Wilma tending to the garden, her hands moving gracefully as she worked. There was a serenity about her, a quiet strength that Sunflower admired. In many ways, Wilma reminded her of the queens from the stories the stable boys used to tell, gentle but strong, wise but humble. Sunflower often found herself drawn to Wilma, seeking out her company when she was feeling particularly fussy or unsure about the weather. Wilma never rushed her, never tried to convince her to do things her way. Instead, she would simply stand beside her, speaking in soft tones until Sunflower felt calm again. It was a rare gift, and Sunflower knew she was lucky to have such a kind human looking after her. Whimsy Woods Farm. A kingdom in its own right. As Sunflower looked out across the farm, she realized something else. Whimsy Woods had become more than just a place to live. It had become her kingdom, a place where she was free to be herself, quirks and all. The other animals might not understand her refined tastes or her aversion to rain, but they didn't need to. This was her domain, and she ruled it in her own quiet way. The farm itself was full of life and color, from the lush green pastures to the cozy red barn. Every corner of it held a new surprise, whether it was a patch of wildflowers swaying in the breeze or the soft rustling of leaves in the nearby woods. Sunflower had come to appreciate these little details, finding beauty in the simplicity of it all. And even though the goats sometimes annoyed her with their playful antics, and the chickens were always clucking about something, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. This was her home now, and she was starting to like it more and more each day. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the farm, Sunflower felt a sense of contentment wash over her. Whimsy Woods, with its quirky animals and even quirkier humans, had grown on her. Grumpy Gus with his gruff exterior, Mrs. Loving Wilma with her gentle touch, and the farm itself with its ever-changing beauty. They had all become a part of her life. And while she would always be a princess at heart, demanding sunshine and the finest hay, Sunflower knew that she had found something special here at Whimsy Woods Farm. A place where she could be herself, where she was cared for and understood. She flicked her tail, took a deep breath of the cool evening air, and trotted back toward the barn, her steps graceful and proud. The farm may not have been the grand palace she had once imagined for herself, but it was hers now. And for a princess like Sunflower, that was enough.
Oh, where do I even begin? Life at Whimsy Woods Farm is, well, it's certainly different from what I expected. I mean, as a princess horse, I had my doubts about this place at first. But let's start with the humans. After all, they play a significant role in my royal life here. Let's talk about Grumpy Gus. Oh dear, the man looks like he swallowed a lemon every morning. He's always got that furrowed brow and a grumble in his voice. At first I thought, who does this man think he is? Not giving me the attention I deserve. I'm used to people falling over themselves to pamper me. But no, not Gus. He treats me like any ordinary horse, and I am most certainly not ordinary. However, over time, I've come to see that beneath all that grumpiness, there's a soft heart. He might not offer me apples or sing my praises, but he takes care of me in his own quiet way. He ensures my stall is clean, and when no one's looking, I've caught him sneaking a fond glance in my direction. I suppose Gus isn't so bad, though I wouldn't mind a little more royal treatment from him. Now, about Mrs. Loving Wilma. Oh, she gets me. From the very first moment we met, she knew how to treat a princess. She talks to me in the sweetest voice, always with a kind word and a gentle pat. And the treats, oh, the apples she brings are simply divine. She knows exactly what I like. None of those bland store-bought apples, mind you. Only the freshest, juiciest ones for me. Mrs. Wilma makes me feel like the princess I am, and I adore her for it. She brushes my coat so delicately, making sure my mane is just perfect. I know she understands that I have standards, and she's always so patient with me. I think I might just love her more than anyone else at Whimsy Woods Farm. As for Whimsy Woods Farm itself, it's a lovely place, on sunny days that is. The fields are wide and the grass is soft under my hooves, perfect for a graceful trot when the sun is shining. I feel like I'm in a royal parade every time I step out. But the rain, oh, the rain! I absolutely detest it. The wetness, the mud, it's all so undignified for a horse of my stature. I refuse to leave my stall when it rains, and really, can you blame me? Princesses do not frolic in the rain. But aside from that, I suppose Whimsy Woods Farm is a nice place. There's always someone around to give me attention. Well, almost always. Gus could try harder. And the animals here are friendly enough, even if they don't understand the finer things in life like I do. So, while this may not be the glamorous life of a royal palace, I've come to appreciate my time at Whimsy Woods Farm. It may not be perfect, but it's home, at least for this princess.
She's something, isn't she, Gus? Sunflower's got more personality than any animal I've ever met. She's like a little queen out there.
What? More like a spoiled princess, if you ask me. That horse has got to have everything just so. Fresh hay, clear skies she won't even set foot outside if there's a cloud overhead.
Oh, Gus, don't be so hard on her. She's just got refined tastes. You can't blame a girl for wanting a little comfort.
Comfort? I've never seen a horse turn up her nose at perfectly good hay before. If it ain't from the right part of the field, she won't touch it. And don't get me started on the rain. She acts like she has gonna melt if a single drop lands on her.
Well, she is a princess, after all. You've gotta admit, though, she's a beauty. The way she holds her head high, trotting around the paddock like she owns the place.
Yeah, she's a looker. All right, cannot argue with that. But I've never had to work so hard just to get a horse to move when she does not want to. Stubborn as a mule, that one.
Maybe that's why you two get along so well. You're both a little stubborn when you've made up your mind.
Get along? Who said we get along? I barely tolerate her. Wilma.
Oh, I've seen the way you talk to her when you think no one's looking. You might put on a grumpy face, but Sunflower's grown on you, Gus. I can tell.
All right, fine. Maybe I've got a soft spot for her. But that don't mean she is not a pain in the neck sometimes. She knows exactly what she is doing, too. Plays me like a fiddle. I try to lead her to the barn, and she just stands there, looking at me with those big eyes, like she is saying, not today, Gus.
She's clever, that's for sure. But she's got a good heart. I can feel it. She just needs a little extra care, that's all.
Yeah, I guess. And I'll admit it. When she is in a good mood, she is as sweet as can be. She lets me scratch her behind the ears sometimes, and for a minute, I forget how much trouble she is.
That's because she trusts you, Gus. She knows you care, even if you don't always show it. Animals have a way of seeing past all that gruffness of yours.
Maybe. I just wish she'd make things a little easier on me. Every day is a negotiation with her.
That's what makes her special, though. She's not like the other animals. She's got her own way of doing things, just like you.
Yeah, I suppose that is true. Still, I would not mind if she decided to be a little less particular.
You wouldn't have it any other way, Gus. Admit it, you've come to love that horse, quirks and all.
Maybe, but do not expect me to say it out loud.